Welcome to another episode of the Action Podcast, episode number 26. And today we are reviewing the 1975 classic Jaws. It was recently re-released in theaters in IMAX. I actually saw it in 3D, which was kind of cool. And so we wanted to go back and celebrate and revisit this classic.
Wow, you saw it in 3D. Is that still a thing? I mean, I don't think I've seen a 3D movie in forever.
Yeah, it's still a thing. It's definitely dropped a bit, but almost every major blockbuster release you can see in 3D still. So
Cool.
I usually rotate. I usually see like once in 3D, once in IMAX. I usually try and get all the kind of the different versions just to.
I'm gonna go back and watch Crimes of
Yeah, you want to see that in 3D.
Goodness gracious.
But yeah, so with me, we have a new guest here on the Action Podcast. I want to welcome Drew Stewart.
Hey, Phyllis.
Hey, Drew.
And then, of course, we have my brother Pete Dog, who's back live with us.
Back to cause mischief.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like I mentioned, Jaws already got re-released, which is why we wanted to review it. And, you know, this was Steven Spielberg's first pretty much blockbuster. And, you know, this film in film history invented the summer blockbuster. Films back in the 70s weren't movies that were released in the summer typically were movies that the studios were just trying to kind of get out and get rid of in a sense, and they weren't considered the big films. And this was supposed to be released in Christmas, but due to them shooting in the actual Atlantic Ocean and, you know, dealing with the shark practical, this film just had so many kind of issues that the schedule bumped it, and it got released in the summer, and it invented what we now know as the summer blockbuster season, which is now where all the major films that are trying to make money get released. So,
Right.
You know, this film, again, kind of started, film history-wise, this film is pretty big in that respect. Steven Spielberg, again, his first major film. He did Duel before this and did television, but he was not Steven Spielberg yet, and this movie changed his trajectory. And really just how this film affected audiences as well. This is also why this is such a kind of a big film. Now, if you're watching this film for the first time and you're older, this film may not have that same kind of impact for you. This, you know, it especially with CGI and all that, it does not really, I'd say, translate very well. But if you can watch this film under the context of knowing, you know, that a lot of this stuff had never been done before, then you can really kind of understand the historical weight of this film. And like for me personally, you know, obviously I was not born when this movie came out, but I did see it, I want to say fairly young. I saw it probably in the mid 80s, Pete, right? Does that sound about right? Mid to late 80s?
Yeah.
So I saw it probably before I was 10 years old. And, you know, for me, this definitely messed with my head in terms of, you know, when I'm swimming in the ocean, you know, you're just looking for that fin to pop up, you know what I mean? And I definitely remember,
or like get jerked underwater really fast.
yeah. So I definitely remember this film like having that sort of impact on me, like it did for so many people. And you know, this film, you know, increased, you know, oceanography, and you know, this is the first film shot in Martha's Vineyard up in Massachusetts as well. So again, a lot of firsts that this movie really did. And so, Drew, we'll start with you. What was your experience with this film?
So it's interesting because it came out a couple years before I was born, and then there was a period of time there when I was young where I had no chance of watching it. My parents, you know, I thought I would be scared, probably justifiably. So I went probably a lot of years without seeing it. And then by the time I was seeing it, if I had to guess, probably like 10, 11, all of a sudden there's way better graphics and effects and things like that. So I remember when I first saw it, being scared for sure, but also thinking like technologically wise wasn't like the most impressive thing that I had ever seen.
Yeah, right.
I mean, kind of it was already dated even as a young person, just because there was a flood of some of these other movies in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's
even
still
the sequels
Say it
too,
again?
right?
Yeah, right. But there was still something about it, the music, especially like John Williams' score, I think, so iconic, and it just kind of transported you as you're watching it. So, but it's definitely one of those movies that I've grown to appreciate more the more I've seen it, the older I've gotten, actually, interestingly.
Nice, nice. Yeah, Pete, what is your thoughts?
Wow, this movie, when it first came out, I'm in the same boat as you guys. It was a couple years before I was born, but by the time I saw it, I mean, this movie had such an impact on me because still to this day, I do not go in the ocean other than I might go up to my chest, but that's about it. Just to like do a quick boogie board ride or something, like that's it. This movie even messed me up to the point where I don't even like go into lakes or rivers or it just because it started a whole trend of like then piranhas came out and then barracudas came out and then like all of these sort of secondary sort of crappier versions of this story. But this is one of those movies that I watch once a year, because like so many Spielberg movies, like the way that he tells a story is incredible, and the themes that he uses throughout are absolutely incredible as well. But this movie just tapped into this this sort of primal fear, that people have never really seen before in a theater, especially. But it just got on them, and it just freaked them out in such a way because at that level of fear, of the unknown. I mean, and that's the first half of the movie is just you don't see him, Jaws, at all, and so it just builds this sort of tension, and the way that the movie is presented is like this sort of ebb and flow of tension and relax. Like it's just
Yeah.
this constant buildup where you never really just kind of settle into anything. You never like kick back one time, and it's just a freaky movie. I get it that it doesn't translate, to maybe like the younger generation or people that have seen like tons of movies throughout the years. But if this movie was special when it came out, for that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And for me again, seeing all of the other Spielberg, John Williams collaborations, to me that's what makes this movie so special too, because they're just so magic together. Like you're saying, the way Spielberg moves the camera, his choices, how what he does with stories, and then when you add John Williams and what he does to a film that no other composer does, it's just insane. I mean, like right
Oh,
when the
this movie wouldn't have been anything the way
yeah
it was if John Williams wasn't doing the score.
yeah and
Um, did I interrupt you?
keep talking. Go ahead.
Okay, because there was just one other point I just wanted to make because I just thought about it. Like this movie really, it sort of kind of was on the edge of this feeling of could this really happen in real life, or is it kind of fantastical in a way? Like, is a big giant shark, is it really going to sit there and hang out at one beach and just annihilate people, or could it actually really happen? It's just like it's weird. Like you can make the
Yeah.
argument on both sides, and I think that's one of the things that sort of messed with my head because it made me think that it was going to happen for real, and that's why I don't go in the water.
Yeah, for
Really
me, what made it plausible is,
messed me up.
well, the mayor, right? Like the mayor character really makes this plausible because he's just like, dude, this is our economy. Like that's what's most important. And the out of town new sheriff or chief of police, Roy Schneider, he's like, no, it's the safety. It's about the safety people, and so you're just seeing different agendas clash, and especially in today's world, I thought that those aspects, the themes of this, made it that much more plausible because you can totally see that happening today, where people ignore what is supposed to happen or what should happen. You ignore the proper people, and it's like, nah, it doesn't really fit what we want to do here. So we're gonna
Yeah,
have to.
look at our food. I mean, half of our
Yeah,
food has shit in it that, if people were like, no, you shouldn't put that in food, and they're like, yeah, it's fine.
yeah.
It's going to save us 5 cents on the dollar, and that equals $1 billion. And I would argue that the mayor is the real villain of this movie, not the shark. Like this guy is just a total bastard.
Well, the shark is definitely the villain, Pete. He ate some people.
Is he? Is he?
But I would agree with
He's
you.
just being a shark. The
The
mayor's just being a dick.
right, right, right.
Thank you.
Yeah, going back to like we're saying, like right from the beginning, John Williams again, like so many other movies, just puts a stamp on this film, and right away it's like, dun, dun, and you're just like, for me, I was already just super excited to sit it because it's been a while since I've seen this film, and I forgot the theme happens like right away, and so like I love the fact that, and then I was doing research. John Williams originally played the score for Spielberg, and Spielberg laughed and said, "That's funny, John. Really, but what really did you have in mind for the theme of Jaws?" And obviously, this won the Oscar for the score. And again, like you're saying, everybody knows the theme of Jaws, and it means terror, and that's the definition of impact right there. You know what I mean? Awesome. So, just like always, audience members, this is a competition between Drew and Pete. And so I will be the judge and award points based on who gives me the better answer. So for our first point is our background and costume. And Drew had an amazing, I love his picture. I saw that one earlier as well. And then has the fisherman outfit. So he's going to get the point for the background and thing, and then I'm going to go with Pete's explanation, give him the point of that. So right away we have a 1-1 tie.
Your face, Drew.
To start this off, and a few other notes. So I've already mentioned this film is directed by Steven Spielberg. It's written by Peter Benchley, who wrote the novel, and then he also wrote a few drafts on it. And then Carl Gottlieb, who was actually also in this movie, also co-wrote it with him. And like Pete was mentioning with Spielberg and his storytelling abilities, Spielberg really took the novel in a different direction, because I've never read the book itself, but the book is fairly different than what this movie is. And obviously that proved to be much more of a success, because this movie was made for $7 million, and it grossed over 263 million domestically, which back in that time is astronomical.
It's like $1 billion.
Yeah, and made 474 worldwide, and that's not even going to include like this weekend and all that stuff. It might even pick up another million or so. So that's pretty incredible in itself.
That's astronomical.
Yeah, and this film stars Roy Schneider, Robert Shaw, who was Quint, right? Did I say that right? And then RichardDreyfuss was fantastic in this, and really, 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 I mean, such an incredible performance. I would even argue he probably did the best acting job performance out of anybody.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Quentin was great, but I heard he was drunk a lot on the set. So
Yeah,
was he really acting?
yeah. Him
But
and
yeah,
Richard
Dreyfuss
Dreyfuss butt heads a lot, apparently.
uh, well, they do that on screen as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, Roy Schneider's good, but I mean, he's not like over the top in a way, like a
no,
Richard Dreyfuss, who's like just so into it. Like, I don't know. I think Richard Dreyfuss is next level
yeah.
for sure.
And he just has just a different personality. Like he adds so much more color, I think, to that character. Which Roy Snyder's character you really don't necessarily want, because you want him as kind of that steady hand. So again, they kind of complement each other well. This was the first movie to reach the coveted 100 million mark in theatrical rentals, and it was the highest grossing movie of all time until Star Wars came out 2 years later. So very interesting. I guess that'd be 3 years later, depending on how you do your math there.
Wow, only held the title for 2 years. That's sad.
I know. So reviews. The reviews on this were actually pretty good. This film got 87 on Metacritic, 8.1 on IMDb, which would have beat ET. So that I found that interesting. Roger Ebert, our boy, gave us
God rest
100.
his soul.
Yeah, so this would have been four out of 4 stars. One of the most effective thrillers ever made, and yeah, hard to argue there.
Yeah.
I guess at this time you're talking like Hitchcock, and then this film really, like those are the really. And what else was maybe Rosemary's Baby, I think, is before this. I'm not sure.
Oh,
The Exorcist would have been out at that point.
Oh yeah, 74. Right. I mean, that's not a thriller though. That's a pure horror.
Wow,
I guess how it depends on how you define it.
it thrills me.
Gene Siskel gave this a 75, which is I'm assuming is 3 out of 4 star. What this movie is about and where it succeeds best is the primordial level of fear. The characters, for the most part, and the non-fish elements in the story are comparatively weak and not believable. Ouch, Gene. Ouch.
I disagree with him wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
That's a dumb comment.
Yeah. And then the worst rating that it got was from Dave Kerr from the Chicago Reader. Steven Spielberg's mechanical thriller is guaranteed to make you scream on schedule. John Williams' score even has the audience reactions programmed into the melodies, particularly if your tolerance for weak motivation and other minor inconsistency is high. Pretty sure David didn't have a job much after that one.
This is a guy that hopefully was drummed out of the business.
Yeah.
Shame on him. A
Shame.
47?
40, just a 40. Like, especially in the 70s.
What a mistake.
What else are you thinking? Okay, guys. Well, this leads us to our first list, and I'm excited about this list. This is our top 5 best 70s films, and this was definitely a fun exercise. Now, again, not being born in the 70s, a lot of these films I saw after the 70s, or like after the 80s even, like more when I'm an adult, but a lot of good films to choose from. I'm interested to hear both of your lists. So we started with Drew on the first one. So Pete Dog, we're going to start with you. Give us your top 5 best 70s films.
Yeah, this was tough. This was there's so many great. I mean, before we started this show, Drew, we were talking about this might be one of the better decades in cinema. But so I started looking at these lists and making my own, and there were just too many. So I decided to kind of narrow it down to what movies do I love a lot, but that were also trailblazers to creating something really, really amazing in the future. So, I mean, there's a lot of great films, don't get me wrong. Yeah. So I went number 5. I went The Exorcist, number 5. I mean, it just changed horror and it just took things to a new level. I mean, we never saw anything remotely satanic like that. And there was a lot of language used by a little girl that was just shocking. It was a shocking film, but it was really well done. Number 4, I put this guy. I put Jaws, because of the impact that we've been discussing so far, the impact it's had on summer blockbusters, on how people swim in the water or don't. It's just one of those things where it's got to be on the list. Number 3, I put Rocky. And I know a lot of people talk down about the original Rocky, but I mean, if you just
won like Oscar for best screenplay.
No, but if you talk to like
best picture, one best picture
too. If you talk to like Rocky fans that are just kind of like, I love Rocky, but then you question them about it, they're like, oh, Rocky 1 was so boring. No, because they're developing a story, they're developing characters, they're telling, like, it was really, really well done. And I mean, it formed an IP that is continuing to this day.
Still going. That's the crazy part, right?
Still going. And there's no letting up now that Creed's there. Yeah. Number 2, I put Star Wars. I mean, that was a game changer in cinema, and it took sci-fi into everyday world. It was no longer some weird thing that only some people liked. It was, now everybody loved it. And then the number 1, I combined the 2 films, but it's The Godfather. For me, The Godfather movies are just the greatest things ever. I even went back.
2 over 1 for you, right?
2 was, for me, is way better than 1. But I mean, it's a close second. I actually rewatched the 3rd one, and I still don't like it that much, but I didn't hate it as much this time. So I mean, the more I watch it, it's like fine. But there's my list. Perfect list. Beautiful.
Nice. Definitely. I mean, you can't really argue against any of those films. Those are all still
I'll save honorable mentions.
Yeah. We'll do honorable mentions later. And to your point, Pete, every single one of your films has a sequel and or is getting remade. So, again, talking about impact.
Or started a movement in a way in cinema. You know what I mean?
Well, no, well, The Exorcist is getting redone, so that I think it still had a sequel too, though.
Yeah, but it also had a series. But then what
Oh,
it
yeah.
did for the horror genre, I
No,
mean,
no,
it
no,
took
for sure,
it
for sure.
to a different direction. Thank you.
I mean, every single one of those films made an impact. So,
Yeah,
uh, but
beautiful.
we'll see. We'll see what Drew has.
It's gonna
Drew,
be tough, Drew.
That's a great list, and I would be lying if I said I didn't consider all of those films for my list. And amazingly, I think somehow we don't have any of the same films, which is crazy.
wow.
And I actually thought about all of those. I will say off the jump, I eliminated Godfather and Star Wars because I didn't do like trilogies or like multiple ones. I chose for my list. I chose to do standalone films for whatever reason. Also because it's not fair. Like The Godfather is the best movie of all time, right? So like of course it's so I can't argue with it. I just chose not to include those two for that reason. But
You chose to lose the list. Okay, go on.
the first one, one of the major themes of the '70s for me was sort of like the political dramas and sort of all of the like political intrigue and paranoia films and things like that. This one is maybe some of the less paranoid, so to speak, because we all kind of know the story. But I put All the President's Men on
Yeah.
there. Redford, uh, and Hoffman, both icons of the '70s, amazing performances. Woodward and Bernstein's collaboration on the script and all of that, just kind of their fingerprints on it, kind of made it feel almost like a documentary while being a film as well. The outfits,
That's a
Ben
great
Bradley,
film.
like, the whole thing is, I loved it.
Even gave
Um,
Pete his nickname of Deep Throat, so that's interesting.
Fair enough.
Where where
The
I got
next
my inspiration.
the next one for me, a little more off the beaten path. I chose the Last Picture Show
Oh,
uh, with Jeff,
Ah,
Sybil Shepherd. Kind of, I'm a huge Larry McMurtry fan, the author. So it's adapted from one of his books, and just kind of for me, one of that sort of slice of life growing up tale in this desolate Texas town, introducing Jeff Bridges. Just for me, a really, really good film of the time. The third one, speaking of sort of genres, how many Vietnam films do you have to choose from? Lots of good ones during this time. And I chose a pretty, I would say, probably very imperfect film, but one that resonates with me on a lot of levels, which is The Deer Hunter.
oh wow.
Um,
ah.
really, really long,
I
but
thought you were gonna go with the other one.
I didn't, and it was a toss up. And
Yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
because I watched the other one most recently, I didn't put it on the list, but
Mm.
we can talk about that later.
Well,
But
you know what? Just real quickly, I have this feeling, Paul, that Drew knows way more about movies than I do. I just get this sense that
I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's true,
I don't know.
but
You're talking some good talk.
I really like The Deer Hunter. Its performances, Walken, De Niro, obviously, a very young Meryl Streep. Anyway, really good.
Famous Russian roulette scene.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um,
Crazy.
Next is speaking of icons of the '70s. How do you choose among them? Maybe the least Jack Nicholson of films, but Chinatown. Um, just a great, neo noir. Being in the LA area, love the intrigue of like the Department of Water in LA and all that kind of like all
Yeah.
that stuff. And then for me, my last film is the most '70s in a lot of ways. De Niro, Taxi Driver, dirty, grimy, very obvious, but I can't think of '70s films without thinking of Taxi Driver.
Wow. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Yeah,
Incredible.
very independent list. I mean, like you're saying, both these lists have merits to them, and
Yeah.
I could see both these directions working. I've got probably a hybrid of you two, in terms of I did some of these very cinema classic, less quote unquote popular, but great films themselves, but then also added some of them. So I got kind of a mixture too. So my number five is I had Chinatown as well, and
China.
yeah, I saw that the first time I saw it wasn't terribly long ago, probably mid 2000s, I think. And it was just a film that I thought really held up and was still very interesting and well done. And one of my favorite films. I watch that probably like once a year. Love that one. My number 4 is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, also with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And again, I saw that one in film school, and I love that film. You really saw, because before that, I always knew Jack Nicholson as, well, at that point he did the Joker, in Tim Burton's Batman. But before that, I'm like, how did he get there though? Like, what did he do to make him like a star? Like, he had Lakers tickets, right? Like, growing up, he was just the guy on the sidelines, but I never knew really what he did, and I hadn't seen Chinatown. And then when I saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. This is Jack Nicholson. And I hadn't seen The Shining yet either. So
Oh, you saw that before The Shining?
correct. I saw One Flew.
Wow.
That's probably
You
my
actually got to see his acting evolution. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I saw The Shining first, and that was just like, wow, this guy is intense.
I just saw The Shining like 5 years ago. So
That's crazy.
yeah. Well, because I was never into like kind of the super scary ones. Like Exorcist was the same thing. I only saw that like 10 years ago.
Right.
So
God, I love those.
yeah, my number 3 is Rocky, and kind of combating what Pete said, like what a lot of people. What I do love about Rocky is how different it was from a traditional sports film, and where the character really had so many layers to it. And again, I also love the story of just Sylvester Stallone really not giving in and wanting to star in it, as well as he wrote it as well, and just a great kind of story of how that film is made as well. My number 2, and I think this movie continues to move my list. If I did this list maybe 5 years ago, this movie would not have been on my list. But especially after watching The Offer, I appreciate this film so much more on what it took to make this film. And I'm picking Godfather over Godfather 2 for that reason. Is this film was so difficult to actually get done, and for them to actually execute it and get it done with what went in the background is a
It's
miracle in
true. I
itself.
mean, if you guys haven't seen The Offer on Paramount Plus, I mean,
So good.
just subscribe to that streaming just to
Yeah.
get it. I mean, it's that good.
It's
Drew,
definitely
have
one
you
of the
seen it?
best like behind the
No,
scenes.
I'm not even. What is it? Is it like a documentary?
No, The Offer is it's like a 10 episode series with
Miles
what's
Teller.
Miles Turner.
Teller.
Miles Turner's a basketball player.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically he plays Al Reddy, who is the producer of The Godfather, and it's just like how they were able to make this film, and it's really well done. Like if you ever wanted to know what it takes to be a producer, this movie tells you.
Yeah.
Basically, the answer is whatever it takes. Like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
get the job done, get the shot done, get the script done. It doesn't matter, just do it.
Yeah. And then my number 1 is, like Pete said, Star Wars for all the reasons. Again, not only is it the most grossing franchise of all time, but again, kind of what George Lucas did to make this film, with the blue screen and the sound, and again, it just invented so many different new techniques. And obviously Skywalker sound was built eventually from this. The Industrial Light and Magic, the VFX, spawned out of this as well. And so you're just seeing them kind of take it to another level. So
Is it really the biggest grossing? I thought MCU at this point would have passed Star Wars. No.
I think it
Think about
depends on
that for
how,
a little bit.
yeah, it depends on how you define it, because you might be right. The
Box office
MCU might,
gross, I guess.
yeah,
I
because
guess I mean if
they have
add
more films.
merchandising and like all of that into Star Wars, then yeah, maybe because I mean,
Yeah,
God,
yeah, he made a killer deal merchandising. So, yeah, so that's my list. So,
I got a couple of honorable mentions here because I think I must say them because
yeah,
they were iconic films that again they set a standard that people sort of followed and copied for many years, even to this day. One is Superman. I mean,
yeah,
that was like one of the first, if not the first, superhero movie that actually was amazing.
Yeah.
The other one is Animal House in
Yeah.
'78. I mean,
I had that. I had that too.
that spawned this incredible way to tell a comedic story and gave us a lot of brilliant,
Yeah.
legendary comedians. And lastly, Saturday Night Fever, just for I mean, the music, the dance moves, the clothes. I mean, it's replicated over and over and over again
Yeah.
throughout the decades. It doesn't even matter. It just always comes back. It's always cool. Staying Alive, you can't get a song like that, and nobody ever goes, "Oh man, I got to hear this song again." You know, everyone just gets pumped and just goes crazy.
Yeah. I also had Apocalypse Now. I'm surprised that that wasn't on any of our list.
Yeah, that's the
It's
one I
not necessarily
struggled.
like my favorite film, but it is a great film nonetheless. You know, that one's hard. That one's harder to watch just because it's so real and raw. But what it was is it's still, you know, cinematic masterpiece. And then Alien, of course, kind of the same. You know, just a classic that started a whole franchise. Um, and then French Connection was the other one that I had that
Mm,
with Gene Hackman. That's another film that held up pretty well, and again, kind of like Drew mentioned, just kind of epitomizes the '70s and you know the police dramas that were very, very popular in the '70s as well. French Connection is, you know, definitely one that paved the way. Was there any ones that you had, Drew?
Yeah, well, I almost feel like honorable mention could be just the work of John Cazale. He made 5 films in Fredo from Godfather. He made 5 films only in his
Hmm.
lifetime, including like The Deer Hunter was his last film after he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Right.
Kept going. So he was in one of my honorable mentions, The Conversation with Gene
Oh,
Hackman,
right.
mm,
which is similar, I think, in vibe to some of those. Dog Day Afternoon, he was also in, which we were just talking about that a little bit beforehand. Just
right.
definitely an interesting and unique pushing the envelope there. And then I also had Alien. And then my last one was for me, talking about comedy. I love the Animal House call. For me, it was Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, good call. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
God, that movie's so good.
So good. So for me, that one also was kind of a game changer, bringing the British humor kind of abroad and just, but the genius of John Cleese kind of to the masses.
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
man, we discovered that movie in high school, and we ran around high school. We from an outsider watching us, probably looked like a bunch of idiots, but we thought that we were the funniest people in the world just because we were doing impressions.
For sure.
Awesome, awesome. Well, guys, I'm not gonna lie. You're what makes it so difficult to choose between is your both your lists are so different. But yeah, again, they're so good. So it's usually it's like one or two movies. Like, oh well, I like this list better than that. But I love both of your lists. Um, I'm gonna give it to Pete. I'm gonna give it to Pete.
That's the safe bet. Well done.
But I
Godfather and
really
Star
want
Wars.
Drew. I really want to give you the point there.
No, I get it.
But
Leaving off Godfather and Star Wars is I'm taking a risk.
yeah, you know, if maybe instead of the Last Picture Show, if you would have thrown one of them in, I think I would have gave it to you.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but and the Deer Hunters, that one's rough to get through. Even though there's some great scenes in that one, like I mentioned before. But again, both of you have great lists. So I have Pete taking the lead 2-1. Uh,
Boom, son.
so again, plenty of game left here. So our next category
And by the way,
is
Drew, historically, I always get like the first couple points, and then I never get anything ever again.
Okay. Fair
yeah.
enough.
Pete doesn't know how to finish. So
Yeah, you're in good hands.
okay, so our next category is in the Oscar goes to, and this can go to a cast or crew member who you think performed the best, and it can be the writer, director, anybody who you think ultimately deserve it. Now, with that being said, this movie did win 3 Oscars. It won for Best Sound, which was Robert L. Hoyt, Roger Hernan Jr., Earl Mattery, and John R. Carter. It also won for Best Film Editing, Verna Fields, who is one of the greatest editors of all time. And then won Best Music Original Dramatic Score, John Williams. So those are what it actually won. And then it was also nominated for Best Picture, Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown. And it lost to, I had this in my notes somewhere.
74.
75 was, who did, We are. I think we already mentioned the film that it lost to.
Animal House.
Oh, one flew of the cuckoo's nest. I think it lost to one flew of the cuckoo's nest.
Yeah.
So, Drew, we'll start with you on this one. Who does your Oscar go to?
Tough. Like I said, there's lots of iconic things about this film, but maybe John Williams' score is the most. But because it won it, I'm not going to go there. I was breaking it down. I think sort of the special effects folks, maybe I could have gone with, but at the end of the day, even though he's not my favorite actor by any stretch of the imagination, Richard Dreyfuss is just, I mean,
Yeah,
he's astonishing in this movie, and I'm prone, I'm prone to not probably give him as much credit as he's due. He's electric in every scene he appears in. His laugh, his reactions, the way he plays in between Quint and Chief Brody. It's just, I don't know. I'd be hard pressed to give it to somebody other than him. And there's a lot of accolades to go around for this film, but I think Dreyfuss for me, kind of, especially upon rewatching it and watching it a little more closely, I think he did an amazing job.
yeah, yeah,
That's great because I was thinking after I watched it again the other night that I was like, wow, I did not give Richard Dreyfuss his props early on in my life. You know what I mean? Like he just did a phenomenal job. That's a great choice.
yeah. Pete, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's the obvious answer is like, well, who would you give an actual Oscar to? Already won the Oscar is John Williams. So you can't really go with that, even though, I mean, that's the easy answer. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go with the second easiest answer and say Steven Spielberg because when people think of directors, they think it's the person who just looks through the camera and kind of tells people what to do. But I mean, the director is in charge of the storytelling and is sitting with the editor to make sure that that story gets told and is cut, and has that pacing that just um, makes things enjoyable. But then also, you know, they put in so much effort into this dumb shark that just didn't pan out, and he was about to just blow it up, like literally in real life. And then just he changed. He had this ability to be flexible, and he just changed his approach and said, "Look, why don't we just not show him at all for like ever?"
yeah.
Which actually added an amazing amount of suspense and tension, and a lot of growing fear. I think he should have won it just because he did everything for this movie,
And
and
he
it
wasn't even
showed.
nominated either, which is crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah, like he got nominated for Best Picture. He didn't get nominated for Director, and to Pete's point, he also made a couple great decisions when it comes to the camera. And a lot of this film, I think it's 25%. If I read that before, 25% of the film is shot at water level, and so we always kind of had this perception of the shark is lurking or right right above water. And again, those are not every director has, and Spielberg wasn't the first choice as the director for this one. I forget who the actual other one was, but
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that about the water level thing. I'm gonna rewatch it again and look for that.
yeah, I read it, I read that before I saw it, and I definitely noticed it. But a lot of it, is right at that level. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I had it somewhere on my notes of who the other director was supposed to be. But again, he just had a different. I think he called the shark a whale, and the producer's like, oh, "Okay, dude, if you don't know the difference between a whale and a shark, yeah, you're not going to direct this film." And so like they cut the guy.
You're fired.
Yeah. So I literally had exactly what Drew said, which is John Williams, and then Richard Dreyfuss. He really, really, really stood out to me
You
so much
can't
more.
you can't argue with it at all.
Spielberg would be my number two. There are some other issues that I have with this. Now, part of it is I know how much, like I said, this film went through a lot of issues, and so some of it that it doesn't translate as well. But in my director's chair, I got a couple of things that I would have done differently that that would have maybe give Spielberg the win on that one. But
Well,
so
don't
yeah,
don't blow your load yet.
So yeah, 2-2. Again, super tight race here. Okay, so the
Oh,
next
Drew
one.
got the point.
Yeah, Drew got the point on that one.
All right.
So our next category is the Get Me Ari Gold Award for different castings. And for this one, we're going to do a little bit differently, Pete. So what I'm thinking of is I'm going to give you some of the casting notes that I found. And then ultimately, both of you, you're going to pick of the three main characters, you're going to pick a different combination that wasn't casted, if that makes sense. So obviously, Richard Dreyfuss is excluded. Robert Shaw and Roy Schneider are excluded. And then based off of the names I give you, you're going to create your new Jaws cast team. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
How is that? How is that different than what we usually do?
usually you pick each character like once, but I
Oh,
want it. I want it as a team.
okay.
Make sense? That's
Okay.
a little small difference, but this one I just wanted. This one I felt was different than other films based off what I have. So, director Steven Spielberg considered Charlton Heston for the role of Brody, which is Roy Schneider's character. Both Heston and Universal Studios showed great interest. The main reason Spielberg decided against casting Heston was because of his heroic roles in his current spate of movies, specifically Earthquake 1974 and Airport 1975. And so Spielberg reasoned that Heston would have been casted. It would signify to the audience that the shark has virtually no chance against this larger-than-life hero. So I thought that was interesting. In his biography, Spielberg revealed that Robert Duvall had encouraged him to make the movie. In return, Spielberg offered Duvall the role of Brody, but he turned it down, fearing it might make him too famous, which is a weird note there. Duvall wanted to play Quint, but Spielberg told him he was too young. Benchley's choices, Peter Benchley, the writer, for whom to cast in the film were Robert Redford, Paul Newman, and Steve McQueen.
I mean, can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
And I want God to be in it. Like what? Like
yeah, right?
name three more famous people.
Yeah. Especially in the 70s. Like, those guys are
Crazy. Like, yeah, no kidding, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, good luck with the budget, too. That's definitely not a $7 million film at that point. Lee Marvin was Spielberg's first choice for the role of Quint, despite his reservations about using big-name actors. Spielberg wanted Sterling Hayden for the role of Quint, but Hayden was in trouble with the IRS for unpaid tax. And so, yeah, so that's ultimately how they got to Robert Shaw. Kevin Kline was offered the role of Matt Hooper, which is Dreyfuss's character. He told Spielberg that he knew someone who was an oceanographer and thought he could play one. Spielberg then told him, "I don't want someone who knows someone who is an oceanographer. I want someone who is an oceanographer." So, great little quote there by Spielberg. And I thought this was interesting. The process of a looping background crowd dialogue was up to this point done by taking library crowd sounds. Jaws invented the process of bespoke crowd ADR using a group that included Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, Archie Hahn, and Howard Hesseman. Like three of those, I know three of those guys. I don't know Archie.
Yeah, and they all went on to do a lot of great comedy work.
Yeah, so I thought that was super interesting.
Gotta get your start somewhere, Paul.
Yeah. Dustin Hoffman says in an interview he was offered the part of Matt Hooper. And Jeff Bridges, Timothy Bottoms, John Voight, and Jan Michael Vincent were considered for the role of Hooper. And then Victoria Principal was considered for the role of Ellen Brody. Peter Benchley has a cameo. He's the reporter on the beach. And then Spielberg is the voice on Quint's marine radio when Mrs. Brody tries to contact her husband on the Orca. So those are all the notes. So guys, and we'll start with I think we're starting with Pete first on this one, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so I understand the two of those roles, but the Quint one, what I have one choice.
Yeah, was it just Lee Marvin?
And that's it.
I'm gonna assume you're having Paul Newman as well.
No, Paul Newman was for
Because Benchley wanted Redford, Newman, and McQueen.
Oh, the Benchley has to do with Quint.
No, no, no. Those were his choices to cast of the three main guys. So I was thinking Redford is Brody, Newman as Quint, and McQueen as Hooper. That's how I read it. But
Oh, I would have thought maybe McQueen is Quint, but
I would
let's
have
just
thought.
say, let's just say you can use those guys for any role. I don't. That's I
Oh,
guess part of
okay.
the exercise.
All right. Well, then for Brody, I would go Paul Newman on that one just because he doesn't have that heroic aura. I mean,
Yeah,
Robert Redford would be good, but I don't know. I think that Paul Newman is he can be low key but still shine. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
for
I
sure.
think that he could have brought something really interesting to it. Uh, I would use Dustin Hoffman for Hooper. Um, Only because he's a smaller actor, but he can get angry when he needs to, like Richard Dreyfuss did.
Yeah,
But he can also be very quiet and intellectual. And then for Quint, just because there's not a ton of choices here, let's just use Steve McQueen. Why not? I mean, that dude's he's a maniac in
yeah,
film and in real life. So why not give it a shot?
yeah. I like it. Okay, Drew, what do you got?
can I say the same for any of the characters or
Yeah, you can do
okay.
your list.
Again, because I don't think we have as many options, I'll go McQueen for Quint. I agree for all the same reasons. Like he probably would have been drunk on the set and like
Yeah, he's a
punching people.
maniac. Yeah.
Yeah, lunatic. So that would be good. I would probably say similar, and that's a good call on Paul Newman, but I'll go Duvall for Brody.
Hmm.
I think he could be similarly quiet, but
Mm.
commanding when needed. Um, I was gonna do Hoffman. Ah, yeah, I had Dustin Hoffman for Hooper too, but let's say,
You can
uh,
keep it if you
all
want.
right,
It's up to you.
yeah, I think Dustin Hoffman of all of those, actually no, scratch that. I'll go Redford for Hooper. I could see him being, I could see him being righteously indignant a
Hmm.
lot and doing that thing and seafaring.
Yeah, those are interesting. Those are interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of Redford things that we see nowadays, like he's so calm, you know what I mean? But yeah, back in the day, he could really belt it out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna do Paul Newman for Brody, just because he's
Sounds good.
got the star power, but like you're saying, can play it mild. I'm gonna go. I will go Lee Marvin for Quint, just because he's got that kind of rough personality. He always plays a lot of military roles,
Yeah,
and
he's almost like a Sam Elliott back in the day.
yeah,
yeah.
He's what
yeah.
Sam Elliott is now.
And then I like what you guys are saying with Dustin Hoffman too. I think he's got that kind of pizzazz to be eccentric, and of course, obviously, he's won multiple Oscars, right? Won multiple Oscars, so I think that's what I'm gonna go with. And then I'll give Pete the point on that. I liked Pete's.
I
I
think
think you both had good teams, but I'm gonna go with Pete on the point.
I think Drew, this is the case of if you would have gone first on the list, that you would have gotten the point, but just
I,
because I went
I
first,
think we would have chose the exact. Yeah, I would have chose the
yeah,
exact you did, but it's
I,
all
I
good.
don't I don't disagree with that. That's why I rotate, because sometimes,
yeah, it's just one of those things.
It's all
yeah,
good.
sometimes you get put beyond things. Okay.
Yeah, sneaky. I think Paul Newman as Brody could be great.
I think that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Especially after
Bob Scheider is such an interesting guy. Like he's so, I don't know, his baseline is just so mellow. Like he's great, but it's just
Even in like Blue Thunder, I don't know if you ever saw that. Like
Mhm.
years
yeah,
later, the helicopter movie when he's like a cop in a helicopter.
yeah.
Even there, he never really went past a certain level. Like he's
Yeah.
very even keeled.
He's like the most unassuming movie star of all time.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. Okay, so our next category is going to be It's Not Your Fault. And this is going to be the most powerful scene that gets you emotional or sad. So, again, emotion. This can also be terror, I guess, for this film. So either or. Again, I'm not going to define. So Drew, you're going to go first on this one. I'm not going to define what your emotion is, but it's just what is your
Drew, what are your emotions?
what are your emotions,
I
Drew?
have so many. It's hard to say. It's hard with this one. This movie, it's interesting. It's so well done in so many ways, but in terms of like an emotional connection to it
Yeah.
outside of like fear, um,
Well,
I don't.
that's why I gave that little tidbit because yeah,
So
nothing
yeah,
made me cry in this film, right?
no, for sure. But probably the most like obvious, but in a way also like relevant for this in terms of like the way it made me feel was when the mom comes up. What's that kid's name?
Oh yeah.
Oh, the little boy that gets killed.
Yeah, the little boy that gets eaten on the
Yeah,
raft.
the actor's Jeffrey Voorhees. Oh, Alex Kintner.
Yeah, the Kittner kid.
Yeah.
So when Mrs. Kittner comes up in her like black veil and like
Yeah.
that whole deal and slaps him, Chief Brody, yes, slaps him, and reveals that he knew it. And then the when the mayor, who is the world's biggest scumbag,
Yeah.
Thank you.
is like, she's wrong or whatever. And Chief Brody's just like, she's not. Like it's like true colors of the mayor in that moment. Like
Yeah.
even in that moment, he can't admit even to himself that he's wrong.
Yeah.
Roy Scheider's coming to, Chief Brody's coming to grips with it. And obviously the mom's feeling the way she should feel because
Yeah.
she betrayed by the people that were supposed to help keep her kid safe. So for me, that's probably the one.
Yeah. That's good.
I got to be honest. I'm going to do a little spoiler for the future here. That specific line when Brody's like, "No, she's not." Like that's my most underrated
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
That's like my most underrated rated quote for a couple of categories in the future here. But yeah, that's one of those. That was one of those scenes where you finally understood. Well, I'll explain it later.
Yeah.
My most powerful scene was, yeah, because like you were saying, you didn't really cry unless you really loved Jaws and he blows up and you start crying hysterically. No, not Jaws. I think it's the calm before the storm, the speech about from Quint about the USS Indianapolis and
Oh yeah.
the way that story was told. And I remember the first time I heard him giving that speech and I was watching and I was filled with a terror because I imagined myself in those waters and there's thousands of people around me getting eaten one by one. And thank God I was in the middle instead of I was on the edge at the beginning of that sinking ship. I don't know. It was a powerful scene and it really kind of brought you into his world. And you kind of understand why he is the way he is, because who would you be after experiencing something like that? I don't even know. I would be drinking all day.
Right.
How do you get over that?
That was the other one. Those were the two I was vacillating between. And you're right. It's the only time where he's like human in the movie, and it makes sense.
Yeah, mine, and again, it's because none of the other ones really made me like emotional. But the only scene I can think of, and it was probably for me, I guess, the most chilling scene is the beach scene after the first attack, and it's basically where Alex Kintner gets eaten. But there's a lot of teases in there, and Roy Snyder's on the beach and he's terrified of the water, and everything is just kind of like spooking him out. And again, a lot of these tricks of what are they called? Not deking, fainting. Faint. I'm not saying that right. When you faint, like a fake, like a
like FEIG. Yeah.
Yeah. So Spielberg does a lot in that scene, and so you're kind of on edge because you just know it's going to happen, but you just don't know how or when.
That was one of the examples when I was talking earlier on at the beginning about the ebbs and flows of certain scenes, like that one for sure.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what? And then no, there's nothing. Oh, what? And then no, it's nothing. Just another one of those really brilliant scenes.
Yeah.
It could have been a really boring scene just at the beach, and then there's a shark attack. But no, he went completely bananas on that scene and really made it great.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna award the point on that one for Drew, only because I do like
What?
Roy Schneider's line in that one, and I thought that was just a great kind of, again, kind of a character display there. So we are all tied up at 3-3, guys. But Pete, your scene was great too. Again, honestly, a lot of these are flip of the coin here, which is making this a very interesting
I think I
match.
got robbed.
You guys know when they found the Indianapolis? I'm a history geek. They found it in 2017.
Oh yeah. And somebody paid for it.
Yeah, Paul Allen.
Right. Yeah.
Like, spent a gazillion dollars and they went and found it like in
I
the
actually want to watch the Nicolas Cage film now. I never saw it. It was kind of an independent film, but it's called USS Indianapolis with Nicolas Cage. And I actually want to check that out. I've been wanting to see it, and I just never gotten to it. But
Oh, I thought you were talking about his Con Air, his under the radar.
yeah,
I'm always a little hesitant to watch a Nicolas Cage movie that I haven't heard of. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it usually doesn't mean good things.
no, but that's why I want to watch it. I mean, I heard the movie's not bad. I don't know how good it is, but again, like listening to the story, it's like it sounds compelling. So I do want to see the story. So awesome. Well, this is going to get us to our next list, guys, and this one's going to be interesting. But this is our top 5 best animal villains. So how we define it is, when the antagonist is an animal, guys. Pretty self-explanatory. We did not. The animal can talk, but these aren't aliens. Someone put alien on one of the lists that I was looking at, and like that's not an animal. Predator's not an animal. That's an alien. So again, it's got to be an animal, something on the zoo kingdom. But we'll start with Pete on this one.
Okay. Mine is a little silly. My number 5, and I might lose this list just because I put this at number 5, but I saw it on one of the lists that I was looking at, and I just started laughing hysterically. And it has to do with a movie that Drew brought up. It's the rabbit in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
The way that rabbit just goes and kills. Yeah, that's number 5. That little rabbit is they should make a movie about just him. Number 4 for me are the spiders in Arachnophobia.
Oh, nice. Good call.
That was one of the movies that I'd mentioned in a previous podcast as one of the more terrifying movies of all time, because when I saw it, it just ruined me, just like Jaws. Number 3, I put Scar from The Lion King. He's my one talking animal, but I couldn't not put him on there just because if you kill your brother and then try to kill your nephew and just do all these really horrible things, I mean, he was just a son of a bitch, and he was the definition of villain. One of the best written villains in Disney history, if I may say so.
Wow, Pete.
Number 2, I put this guy taking a bite out of my shoulder right here. I put Jaws. Only because number 1, I put King Kong, just because, I mean, you can't get bigger, literally, and more iconic than
I see
King
what you
Kong.
did there, Pete.
See what I did? That's what I did. I did one of those.
Nice.
So that's my list. I only had one honorable mention because I couldn't really think of a whole bunch.
Well, we'll do honorable mentions last, but that's it. That's a solid list, Pete. Solid list.
So
You're gonna love my number 5, by the way, Pete. You're gonna love my number 5.
yeah, and you're not going to lose the list because of your number 5, because my number 5 was the killer rabbit of Caerbanong. So the exact same white rabbit from Monty Python. The second one, I'm a giant.
Hey, so guys, just right now, you guys are tied on who wins or loses.
Okay. Is this the last point?
No.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of tension.
I
like
got it.
Jaws.
I'm a ridiculous Seabiscuit fan. So I have War Admiral, the other, thoroughbred giant, big money horse in Seabiscuit.
How did you think of that?
Because Seabiscuit, I'm a freak for it. Another one is, and this one is probably fairly obvious, but again, in terms of like importance in cinema history, maybe not the best graphics in the world, but the birds in the birds.
Oh, yeah.
This one is a little bit of a flyer, but Salacious B. Crumb.
I saw that on there. Yeah,
the monkey lizard from Return of the Jedi that sits on Jabba and like antagonizes him into torturing Leia and other people.
Is that an alien though?
It says it's a monkey lizard, so I'm going with that rather than an
All
alien.
right.
And then this one, I was a little bit nervous that you might think it's an alien, but it's on Earth. It appears to be terrestrial, and that's one of my most underrated movies of all time, The Graboids, or the worms from Tremors.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. I don't know enough about the mythology of Tremors to know if they came from somewhere else or what. So
I mean, if they're underground, they have to be of this Earth.
I can't even argue the point. Damn it.
So those things freaked me out. Love that movie. Love those things. They're scary.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible.
Wow. All right. That was a solid list. So I've got a little bit of all your guys's.
Out of the gate.
My number 5, guys, and this is sneaky good. And if I was in this contest, I would win just for my number 5. But my number 5 is the alligator that ate Chubb's hand from Happy Gilmore.
It's good.
Because
well, that's true, because I was just thinking, is that really a villain in a movie? But I made the rabbit who's in Monty Python for about 2 seconds.
Yeah. Well, he's a villain. He's not the major villain in the film.
Right.
But he is a villain in the film because he obviously, again, he ate Chubb's hand, and then, he eats Billy or Happy's ball.
Right. Damned alligator bit my hand off.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my my number 5. My number 4 are the Velociraptors in Jurassic Park, and they're just so vicious, and you think it's the T-Rex is the villain for most of the movie, and then you realize after the first one, at least, you realize that it's actually the Velociraptors are the badasses. And nobody knew what a Velociraptor was before this film, and
No.
My number 3 is Shere Khan from Jungle Book. Again, that was my talking one there. But that that's for my boy Mark Mead, because after our discussion yesterday, he lambasted me for that one. My number 2, Pete had it, King Kong. Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? He's
not much.
Bad. And then number 1,
nothing on me.
Number 1, yeah, Jaws, I think, is the greatest animal villain of all time.
I think you can swap the top 2.
You could. They're definitely the 2 most famous ones, and they're actually have their own amusement park, ride at Universal Studios, and so yeah, that is my list.
I apologize. I didn't realize we could use the film we were talking about in the lists.
Oh, so yeah, you
probably would have made an appearance, but.
Where would you have put it, do you think?
Jaws? I mean, iconic.
Okay.
I don't know, top 3 probably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So other honorable mentions I had was Cujo. I actually had Cujo and I crossed it out to include the alligator from Happy Gilmore. And then, of course, like Godzilla. And I know Godzilla is not a pure animal, but it is still theoretically of this earth. And it's pretty much a reptile. And, him and King Kong come from that same Skull Island, So I thought it worked. And then, you had Scar, Pete. So, yeah, that's...
I was thinking, and tell me if you think this is a villain or not, or if it was just a bad circumstance, but I was thinking about the bear in The Revenant. Would that be considered a villain?
Yeah, because he fights him.
Well, he fights him, but I mean...
That'd be a good one. That's a nice out-of-the-box kind of answer there.
Because that was going to be my 5, but then I saw the rabbit thing, and I'm like, no, I got to go rabbit. 100%.
I mean, the Revenant bear is like one of the most famous bears now, because, that was such an incredible scene, and the CGI work, and just how they filmed it was pretty insane.
Right up there with Smokey.
Yeah, one of your top bears.
One of your premier bears. By the way, have you seen the new Smokey advertisements where they make him like all like chiseled and like buff?
Yeah, hot Smokey.
Yeah, he's like hot Smokey now.
Interesting.
Hot Smokey, yeah. I love it. All right, I'm gonna give. Can
I give a shout out to Hercules, aka the Beast from The Sandlot, as an honorable mention?
Oh, nice.
That's a good one.
That being a friend later on, but
Yeah, that's what it makes that one tricky. It's a good honorable mention one. I'm glad you
Yeah.
didn't put that on your list because that.
Good call, not putting it on your list.
Uh, I'm gonna give. I know you kind of amended it, but I'm gonna give Pete this one because Jaws and King Kong. I think. But I like again, Drew. I love your creativity. You are stretching all of our audience's mind, and I love that. And keep doing that. Never,
Oh,
never, never change.
I'll say it again. I'm convinced he knows more about movies than I do.
Oh, I'm way beyond convinced, Pete.
It's a shoe-in at this point.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I have four more categories, guys, and that'll wrap it up. But okay, so our next is so our score is 4-3, Pete. So again, anybody's ball game with 4 points left. So next we have Ma the Meatloaf, scene that makes you laugh or feel good. So again, I know there's not tons of comedy in this film, so feel good might be. There's a couple scenes that I have, but we'll see what you guys have. So I'll start
Yeah.
with you, Drew, on this one.
First of all, I love the name of this category because I did spit out my drink the first time Will Ferrell drops it like "Ma." So
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
so I don't know that I'm supposed to laugh on this because it's one of the more dramatic scenes of the movie, but I laugh out loud every time. It's Charlie and the other old guy on the pier at night
Oh yeah,
when Jaws comes and like rips the pier off, and then like Charlie just like plays dead on the like broken part of the pier as it's like drifting out, and he's just like laying there with his like plaid shirt and his hat, and he's just like limp. And then when he starts swimming back, the other guy's like, "Come on, boy," like to a grown man. Like
Oh
yeah,
man.
it's really, I mean, it's dramatic as well, and like you're nervous that he's gonna get eaten, but just the combination of him going like playing possum on the pier and then his buddy saying, "Come on, boys," it's too good. I laughed every time.
nice. All right, Pete, what do you got?
Yeah, I've got one. Well, it's a funny scene, but it doesn't make you laugh. But I also have a feel good one. Since you went comedy, I'll go feel good, Drew.
Okay.
It's where Brody's son is imitating him.
Oh yeah,
He's doing all these different things, like because obviously Brody's going through a lot, got a lot in his mind, and I don't know, kids just have a way to they just do stuff and they kind of what's that called? They ground you. They
yeah,
just
yeah.
bring you back
Bring
to
it back
earth,
to
and you're
yeah.
just like, what am I so worried about, right? Like you're right, that's ridiculous. I don't need to worry about that anymore. It was a cute scene, and it was nice that he put that in the film. I don't know if it was part of the book or I don't know who thought of that scene, but I think it was well placed.
Yeah, for sure. It actually kind of reminded me of your son a little bit, Pete.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that scene.
yeah, he probably, yeah.
So the scene I kind of had two that I'm kind of split on, but they're both when they're on the boat at the end. But the initial kind of scene when they're out in the boat and they're doing the fishing, I just love the back and forth between Richard Dreyfuss and Quint, and there's a lot of funny lines I thought in that scene, and so just overall I just love the again kind of the back and forth between them. And the other one, which I wish I liked more, but I still like it, is when they're kind of drunk and drinking at night, and they're just singing the songs. It's after the Indianapolis story, but they're kind of just they're doing the kind of sailor things where they're just drinking and singing songs, and
Oh, they're showing off their scars, and
yeah,
yeah,
I just love that kind of back and forth that again they kind of have. It was a nice
I
little scene.
I put that one as the one that made me laugh, just because they keep like you were saying, they've been going at each other
Yeah,
forever, and then now all of a sudden they're buddy showing off each other's scars, and
yeah,
it's like their relationship just went full circle
yeah,
in just a few minutes. Yeah,
yeah. But it was believable, I thought too. So
yeah, it wasn't
Alcohol.
contrived at all.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna
Were
give
you gonna say, Drew?
I just said alcohol. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
it
worked.
turned
brings
to be
people
friends.
together.
I'm gonna give the award to Pete because I did like that scene. I thought that was again you explained it perfectly, Pete. I thought,
Just
and
running away with it here.
I mean it's 5-3. There's still plenty of game here left. Okay, our next category is line please. So and again, just for clarification, give the kind of your best quote, the most iconic quote, and then your second one is you kind of an underrated quote, one that like you like and may not be like the most popular one. So
Mhm.
hopefully that makes sense. And I'll start with you, Pete.
Who?
You, Pete.
Who? Um, yeah. Number one, the favorite quote is "You're going to need a bigger boat." I mean, I think that's the iconic line from, well, one of the couple of like really famous lines by Brody. And number two, I mentioned it earlier, was the when Vaughn is like, "I'm sorry, Martin, she's wrong," and Brody's like, "No, she's not." It just gave you a sense that Brody's heart was actually really good, and it really kind of differentiated him from the rest of that town that was so toxic, um, in terms of the leadership. So it just set him apart finally from the rest, because up until then he's okay, yes, we caught this fish, maybe they're right, or like he'd go along with stuff even though he disagreed with it. So there was always a back and forth between Brody and the mayor and those people. But that was the first time where he just kind of just broke away, and
Yeah,
I love that moment.
I like it. Drew, what do you got?
I mean, obviously, you're going to need a bigger boat is as iconic as it comes. I'll go. I was nervous that that would be chosen, so I'll go with another one that I liked from the Scumbag Mayor when they're debating slicing open the shark on the dock. And he goes, "Look, fellas, let's be reasonable here. This is not the time or place to perform some kind of half-assed autopsy on a fish. Like, I don't want to see the Kittner boys spilled out all over the dock."
That's such a great line.
Um, so that one to me is an iconic line from there. It kind of again sort of encapsulates the mayor and all of who he is.
Totally.
And then underrated or quieter line that I really like is like the super old guy on that scene where the Kittner boy gets eaten, comes up and he's kind of like in Chief Brody's face, giving him a hard time. He's like, "We know all about you, Chief. You don't ever go in the water, huh?" And Chief just sits there calmly and goes, "That's some bad hat, Harry."
Oh
And
yeah,
I just like gets up, like takes his ball and goes home. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah. And that's how Brian Singer started his production company. That's his line because this was his favorite movie. So
Oh, really?
had Harry Productions. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I actually
Ah,
that's what I had as
good.
that's what I had as the underrated one. And then yeah, you're talking about like the most iconic is yeah, we're gonna need a bigger boat. I think that's the kind of the all time classic one. So yeah, Drew, I'll give you the point on that one because you pretty much had exactly what I had. But Pete, I love your quotes though too. So don't feel bad about yourself, Pete. Yeah, you keep your chin up, Pete.
I'm gonna put me as the scene that gets you the most emotional and sad.
Yeah. There's
I'm gonna
another one I
amend
like.
I'm gonna amend mine and put Peter losing again.
It's gonna be your quote. Well, you're still winning by 1 point.
Well,
Um,
two left to go.
yeah. There's a couple other ones I like too.
Coming down to the wire.
Yeah.
Smiley, you son of a bitch.
So the next one, this is a new category that we have, but we're gonna try it out today. And it's called Great Shot. Kind of like Great Scott from that was where I got that from. But it's your favorite shot in the film, and kind of the same thing, or it can be an underrated. But I just want to hear why you love the shot and what it kind of made you feel. And I'll start with Drew on this one.
Um, there's a lot like this. Obviously, this movie is visually stunning. I will add one as an honorable mention later, but probably for me, is when Hooper's in the shark cage
Mm-hmm.
there at the end. And the shark, for all of its problems and for all of how sort of rudimentary the special effects were back then, looks very real as that thing's smashing into that cage and
Yeah.
the bars start to bend and you start to feel claustrophobic and you're like, this is not going well.
Yeah.
I just have to assume that that was technologically a challenging shot at the time,
Hmm.
and really made you feel that sort of like claustrophobic horror that he must have been going through as that was happening.
For
So
sure.
that's probably my favorite, or the best shot in the film for me. And then also with Hooper, probably, I don't know if it's underrated or just one that maybe is less talked about, but when he and the chief are checking out Gardner's boat at night, and like the water's all lit up and it's green, and all of
Mhm.
a sudden he goes back and I'm just gonna go check it out, and the next second he's in like scuba gear, and
Yeah.
he's down there and he's like poking at the hole, the head comes out, and then he like freaks out, pops up coming out of the water. Kind of reminds me of like Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now. He
Yeah.
like comes up out of the water and it's lit all crazy. That was to me that was a great scene as well.
That's
Nice.
crazy. I mean, when I watched it the other night, like I noticed that scene specifically. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. The way the water is lit up underneath, and it's a beautiful color. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, damn, that's a good one. All right, okay. Um, my favorite shot is, I'm not sure if it was the first time that this technique was used in film, or if it's just because it was Spielberg and it became an iconic thing to do. Is
Yeah.
that the rack focus
Yeah.
on the beach? I mean, it just
No, not rack focus.
what's it called?
It's a dolly in and zoom out.
Yeah, that the dolly zoom,
Yeah.
because I'm a director,
Yeah.
clearly.
No, there's another word for it. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but
I think that was the best shot in the film, because it was just, I don't think we'd ever seen it before. I could be wrong. You're the historian, Paul.
I feel it's not, but it's one of the most popular uses of it. I
Yeah,
thought it was used one time before this, but again, don't.
yeah, I'd never seen it before. Even
Yeah.
even though I saw it years and years and years later, it was still the first time. I'm like, well, how the fuck did he do that? Like,
Yeah.
how do you make the back go that way and then you go?
Yeah.
It just didn't.
Well,
I'm
it's a perfect use of it. I mean, your reality is changing, right? And yeah, it's masterful use of it. I mean, now it gets a little bit overplayed, but for this film, it is perfect.
My underrated shot is when Quinn scratches his fingernails on the board.
Oh yeah,
I love the fact that there's like a little cartoon kind of shark
yeah,
with a person in its mouth that nobody else would. So you just assume that Quinn was back there while people were like debating, and he's sitting there drawing this
yeah.
shark with chalk in the background while people are trying to figure stuff out. And then he's just like, enough. He just scratches that. Maybe that should have been my funniest scene, because I love that. That's hilarious. It tells you a lot about that character, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm with you, Pete. I think the dolly zoom is by far the most
Dolly
iconic
zoom.
shot on this one. There's also that other one with Roy Schneider where he pops up and I think the shark's like right behind him, right? That's like one of the more iconic shots. You always see
When
it.
it's just like, oh.
No, he's like facing the other way, and the shark kind of comes up from behind him. He kind of like looks up.
When he looks up,
Yeah, you always see it like in like whenever they reference the movie, the shot's like always in it. Um, and then the other just, and I've already mentioned it before, but I just want to note it again. But just the general, like the placement of the camera again, like at the sea level, and that's my kind of underrated, because again that's a great director's choice, and I wanted to point that out again. But that's what I have for cinematography wise. Yeah, so Pete, I'll give you the point on this one because you pretty much got what I got. But yeah, again, I love that. Yeah, by the way, I do like this category, so I do want to keep keeping that one, Pete.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay, so our last shot, and yeah, our last category is going to be director's chair. And what would you change about this film, if anything at all? And Drew, I'll start with you. And Drew, I'll start with you.
This one is hard because the film is I don't know. There's so much that's good
I'm
about
with
it.
you. I'm with you. I almost like concede this category, because it's like, I don't know. I can't think of stuff that I would really want to change.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is what I'm about to say is like kind of preposterous because it's kind of the whole gist of the film, the
You want a
latter
better
half.
shark?
But
If I was director, I would get a better shark.
Yeah,
um,
that was mine because I was like, but then if you got a better shark, then that means he probably would have gone a different way of
Yeah,
shooting this film, which probably wouldn't have made it as good. So it's like I can't
yeah,
really pick that. So I'm like,
so
anyway, sorry, Drew.
yeah, no, the one thing I would have said, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, is a great scene, and I vacillate between it being a great scene and thinking how just kind of odd it is that scene where they all of a sudden they're drinking and comparing scars and they're best friends. Like they're ready to all kill each other, and all they've done the whole time is, kind of compare manliness and all these types of things. And then boom, they're just like pals. And like the only, like I said
yeah.
earlier, like the only change really was that they were drinking. So it's not it's not impossible to imagine, but it just seemed like such an abrupt about face for them
Yeah,
that part just was a little stood out to me a little bit.
for sure. Pete, what do you got?
I already told you what I got. I got nothing.
All
I
right.
got the you would change a shark, but then no, I
Yeah.
wouldn't. So
Okay. Yeah. So I do have something here.
oh, well, I mean, maybe. I mean, if I had to just pull something out of the butt, um, I would have maybe given his wife a little bit more screen time just to maybe have some kind of representation. I mean, because this was such a masculine movie, right?
Yeah.
Right, and everything. Yeah, I think there was like two women in it, like the one
Yeah.
with the glasses in the in the city hall thing, or where they're debating stuff, and then the wife. But then the wife is just like, dun, 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 like she just doesn't
Yeah.
like. I don't know.
I would have cast Victoria Principal as her, like they were talking about, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Drew gets a point for that.
So mine has to do with the ending. So I I was really surprised how abrupt the ending was, and there were really I thought there was really no resolution for these characters, and I literally didn't like that. It was just like they're just floating up and it's like it's over. You know what I mean? And so for me, and so I thought about like, okay, so how would you end it? What would you do differently? And so for me, so the major, like a character flaw that Roy Schneider needs to kind of get through, right, is this fear of water. And so for me, what I think would have felt like a good kind of punctuation on that would be him at the beach with his son and they're playing like in the water at the very end, and it can be just kind of one line or something. You can add the wife too, but him showing that, obviously he just had this traumatic experience, but then he's actually conquered kind of the this fear of water, and now he can be in it recreationally. And so for me, I think that would have definitely done a better job than what it happened. For me, I was just like, wait, the credits are on already? Like I've never seen it go from like the end of the kind of, or like the middle of the third act to just like credits. And it was really, really weird and abrupt. And
I I see why you would say that. I didn't hate the ending, and I kind of understood it as well. But I see what you're saying. I didn't mind it, but all right.
I just need something like I said, could have been another 2 minutes and just,
Right.
it just felt like it wasn't an ending. Like it was like, okay, all right, and we're done. Roll credits. So I don't know. That's just my opinion, but that's what. And again, I think you're kind of closing the character need, or desire maybe. I would think more about which is which, but all right.
Right.
So I will give. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I'll give the point.
Well, it's got to be Drew only because I didn't really have
Yeah,
a
I'll give the point to
selection.
Drew. So it's 6-5, but Pete, you still won, so it was irrelevant. Um, so with that, Pete, um, and we can kind of make this a group decision anyway. But what would be some, especially because it's our first time, what would be a movie you want to do, Pete, that Drew would also be interested in?
Well, I think that question should be directed at Drew, like, because I don't know what kind of films Drew is into, but like if there's an iconic movie or a movie that was important to you growing up, or a movie that everybody loves that you would love to just talk about, I'll talk about anything, right? So it could be a comedy, it could be I know that we've been thinking about, requests
Goonies.
from fans and stuff like that. And
Yeah. Goonies is off the list for sure. Rocky 4 is off the list. Back to the Future we've already shot. And what was the other one, Pete?
well, we just did E.T., we did Raiders of the Lost Ark.
So
I don't
yeah.
know. Once you just start rattling off some movies.
How about the original Star Wars, A New Hope?
Oh my gosh, I was just thinking A New Hope.
Yeah, obviously it's been on a few of our lists. That's my number one best 70s film, so I definitely think it's appropriate that we do Star Wars. So I'm definitely game. So and we'll probably have a fourth guy with us. So just because Star Wars is,
Massive.
we can easily get our. I usually like doing fours. That way it's a little bit more of a match in terms of like the scoreboard. So cool. We'll do Star Wars. We'll put that on the list. So we'll schedule that. And for our audience members, if you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and like and even comment on some of these lists on your top 5 70s films and your top 5 animal villains.
And let us know what you want us to review.
Yeah. Also, let us know what you want to review. Comment below on some of the films you'd like for us to review. And then also, if you're listening to us on just listening to us, we're available on Apple Podcast, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Please make sure you subscribe and keep downloading our episodes and help us continue to grow. And yeah, with that, guys, thank you so much.
For joining us.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, the next podcast that we'll have on a classic film is Back to the Future, and that'll be out next week. So thank you, Drew, for joining us. Thanks, Pete, as always. And that's a cut, guys. Thank you.